All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our basic. We're starting our educational series with Fantastic Fathers now. People know us as a group who's been putting on all kinds of fun family events for the last few years. And actually, last year, our goal was to get into the meat and potatoes of why we actually do these events and tailor these events around parents interacting with their children and obviously putting emphasis on father participation and involvement. So with the situation that we're in with the world and that, and having to convert over to online stuff mainly. So this actually gave us a chance to kind of expedite that process and start our educational series of events that we have planned. So today, obviously, this one is called The Importance of Father Involvement. We are very fortunate enough to have guest speaker with us, Miss Jana Herde. Did I say that right? Sorry, I hope so.
Almost.
Almost.
It's just fine. Thank you so much.
So she's here today. She has a wealth of actual personal, knowledge of this subject, and obviously studied educational things that she's put herself through. And I'm going to let her obviously talk and go through her bio here and all that, but we feel very fortunate to have her with us today. We follow her on Instagram and Facebook. We love her content. So we're thrilled that you accepted to do this with us today. But before I do introduce you and then go further, I just want to go over some of the Zoom meeting etiquette. Obviously, keep your microphones on silent, eliminate the background noise and all that. If you do have a question and you feel it's very important and you want to chime in and ask that, feel free to do so. But we are going to have a question and answer period at the end where everyone will get a chance to say and ask whatever they want. So if you can wait till the end, that'd be great. If not, like I said, don't hesitate. Also, we are recording this. We're going to put this on our YouTube channel. That way we can replay this or people can watch it at their convenience. So this will be recorded. If you don't want to be on video, just keep your cameras off. If you maybe have a problem even with your name showing, you might have to edit your screen name on your computer if that's the case too. But just wanted to put that out there for everyone. Basically, other than that, I think we're pretty much ready to go. My name's Steve. I started Fantastic Fathers going 5 years ago now. And I actually started it out of pretty much pure jealousy that there was so many things going on in our community with moms and their children. And I was kind of like not a stay-at-home dad, but I had my daughter in the mornings and I was always looking for things to do. And I saw all the moms walks and moms yogas and moms discussion groups and many of these things. And I just thought it was great. Again, I was jealous. So I started to plan things for dads. Me being a dad myself, I just want, feel comfortable around your peers. And if we wanted to share information and share videos and knowledge. And then it turned out to, hey, we're going to meet at Colasanni's today, or we're going to meet at this park. And it just kind of took off from there. And we became a nonprofit, which was not the original intention. We were literally just a Facebook page. And before you knew it, a couple of years later, we're a fully registered nonprofit. We do tons of events, or we did do tons of events. We can't wait to get back to doing them, of course. And our highlight is our Family Father's Day event that we do, where we originally had planned and hoped for 500 people on our first one 4 years ago. And we actually got 2,000 people that day. And it was great. And it showed a community need for some family-focused events, but also dad-focused events. That event has grown. The numbers the next year even doubled. It went to 4,000 people the year after that, and it continued on until.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we're very proud of that, but we're also equally as proud as the small events that we put on and host, where it could be something as simple as we've had Salon Day with Dad, where dads learn different hairstyles for their daughters and sons. We have, carpentry with Dad, crafts with Dad, bingo with Dad, all kinds of things. And before I even go any further on that, I do want everyone to know, and anyone who's been on our page or been to any of our events knows that this is not a competition between mothers and fathers. We love the moms. We really want the dads to get, be hands-on and get out there with the kids and spending time with them. So we all, our names of our events are with Dad and some things like that, but moms are always invited. We just ask that, Dad is there, or male parental role model, could be uncle, grandfather, stepdad, what, it's just as long as there's some male influence there, we really try to strive for that, which, as we're going to learn today, there are several reasons for that. And I think some of this is going to be very eye-opening, not only for moms or people who don't even have kids per se, but even the dads, just to learn the actual importance of being there and showing up and being involved in your kids' lives, especially from early on and all through life, but in those early years as well. I think that some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today is very eye-opening and very important. So with that, I'm going to transition here to letting Jana take over. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And thanks again for being here with us today.
Yes, thank you guys for actually reaching out and inviting me and suggesting to do this, because I think it's actually awesome that the more time I spend online with my work, the more I see, pages that I didn't know, groups of people that I didn't know, fathers talking about stuff that is really important. And I heard fantastic fathers from somebody that interacts with me quite a lot on Instagram. His name is Jeremy, and he's from Canada too. And he's been live with me on my Instagram page. That is actually one of my main pages where I bring out free content every single day, is Instagram, in case somebody is there. I'm going to give the details in the end. I'm sure people are going to, see the link somewhere once this is out there. But you just said something very important. Even for fathers, it's eye-opening once you tell them a little bit about the facts, and once they see how it is for fatherless children. For example, maybe they had a dad at home and they are at home with their children, but they're not aware of the importance or how all of those dynamics drastically change when they're not present, because for them it's a learned behavior that they maybe have always been there. So I think that's why it's going to be interesting, and I put together a lot of stuff that I think is very important and very fun to listen to, actually, especially for you guys, because I think you have a very positive approach. Like you said, it's not a competition, it's not about bashing mothers, it's about really seeing that both of them are just as important. But sadly, we today often have to remind people of that fathers actually are important and why that is.
Right.
So,
it's generational too. Like fathers were mainly just thought of as the provider, for in previous generations, and that's the role that they went with, and I think each generation, dads become a little more hands-on, and like I say, that we're not just that provider. We can be the nurturer, we can be emotional support, we can be anything that, just like a mom. So with each generation, I notice a big difference, and you either basically parent kind of the way that you were brought up, or kind of the way that you wished you were brought up, or a combination of the three. So yeah, I see the dads out there working harder than ever nowadays.
I'm just going to recap a little bit, because people might not know what I actually do or why this is an interesting topic to me. And it's always easier for everybody to understand a little bit when they see where I actually come from. And I just want to, kick it off by saying that I was born in 1980, so before internet and mobile phone times, which was different, and it actually made a difference. I think how we were growing up was quite different than today. So to some extent, of course, we did communicate with others, you had information, but it wasn't like today, where the internet is around and you can do certain things, and kids are involved also in certain stuff that we did not have before. And I was actually born in Germany. My parents were both from here. And when I was very little, still a baby, my mother decided to separate from my father, because somehow she said the relationship wasn't working and she didn't see it being successful. And she thought it would be better to just co-parent, but not being a couple anymore. So that is a very important piece of data, that I actually have no memory at all about living with the father in the home. So I never really had that as normalcy. that was never my normal life. My normal life was really to be most of the time just with my mother. So I was raised pretty much fatherless because it turned out that my dad didn't really make me a priority. Let's put it like that. We will maybe never know the reasons why some fathers just seem to have different priorities and are not really taking responsibility. So that was my case. I never really had a dad who would reach out, consistently, or try to co-parent in a way that I would know that he is also a present parent. So it was always me and my mom. And when I was 3 years old, we moved to Spain, which is of course, in Southern Europe, and you're much more outside playing with kids. And I must say it was a great place to grow up in. But most kids that I knew from the school also, they were from married parents. It was even rare in the early and mid 80s in a village in Spain to see people who were unmarried. So I was kind of an outsider very early on because I had a mom who was unmarried and she was a single mother. So I really know what it means to really notice at an early age that it is an issue, that people know. And I didn't really feel discriminated because of that or anything, but you start feeling somehow that people ask questions, that people think they have to feel sorry for you somehow, and maybe you don't understand because that's all you know. So why is it that bad? My mom always says, I'm just fine, because that's what we tell our kids to make them feel better, that you're just as good as anyone else. But here's when the problem actually starts. I think that if we don't recognize that there is an issue with growing up fatherless, it's like ignoring that a father is a super important figure and that the ideal thing would be the father being involved. So it is important. We have seen very serious studies conducted in every single country for about 40 years. I mean, the literature is very consistent on this, and fatherless children just have issues. And I had issues as well. So we need to see that fathers are important and that actually so many things are prevented from happening when the father is involved. And here I just want to make the point very quick, and I'm gonna circle back to this later. I know that I even discussed this with you last time we spoke, that a father doesn't need to be dead or divorced and never show up again so a child feels fatherless, or a child is detached from his father. And there are so many kids who say, look, my parents were married, my father worked so much, I rarely saw him. I saw him on the weekends. He was very tired from work, so he would sleep, and I really didn't know this man. He was like a stranger to me. So that's why we see so many girls and boys who display the consequences and symptoms, some of them, of fatherless upbringing, even though the father lived in the same house, which is always very surprising to people when they say, well, I don't think that was my issue. It can be, and that's why it's so great that you do the things you do, because the fathers who maybe still are very subjected to that provider role and dynamic, it's good if they learn that they're needed also for other activities, that the children actually benefit from it a lot, that the whole family benefits from it if they do other type of activities with the kids, if they maybe even make changes in their career or job in order to be more with the kids. Because I mean, many fathers still think that it doesn't matter so much if they don't read the children a story, because mom can do it too, or if they don't eat with the children because, what's the difference? If they are three siblings, they can eat with mom. But it really makes a big difference, and that's why we see it so much in children growing up, in children in school. You see there are the differences in results in different areas of children's lives
Well,
are so great.
I was going to say where we live here in Windsor, it's very manufacturing based city, third lot of, days, afternoon, midnight shifts. So a lot of my friends when I was growing up in public school and high school, our fathers worked afternoon shift. And it's almost like the scene from one of the movies where the little kid's playing basketball and he looks over in the stands or baseball and you see the empty seat there. And I experienced that, and I know a lot of my friends did too. And like you said, now I really want to, as much as I want moms and everyone to know, how important fathers are, I really want dads to know it too. There's so much we can do. We aren't just that provider, like you're saying.
Mm. No, that's it exactly. And it's also important to know that, I mean, why I spent so many years doing research on the topic and collecting data, and why I ended up actually coaching fathers, especially in reconnection. Like, I haven't seen my daughter in 10 years. How do I approach reaching out to her? How do I even do this? Um, Fathers who suffer from parental alienation because maybe the divorce was, I don't know, like brutal, let's say, and the children end up mostly with the mom, and the relationship gets very damaged, even by, by alienation. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the term, but they always call it parental alienation. I usually call it child alienation, because parents, it can be one or the other. But sadly, still we see fathers who divorce. Mostly the fathers lose in court. So they turn into visitors suddenly. They turn into weekend daddies suddenly, when before the divorce, they actually had a normal relationship with the kids. And sadly, the family court system, not only in Canada, I hear it a lot from my clients and friends in the US, in Germany too, although we have a bit of a different system. In the UK, also a lot of problems with dads who have so much trouble getting access to their kids when actually they have been parenting these children till the divorce. But, strangely, the laws or how the judges in the end make the decisions still often goes more to the mother, when actually we don't know if the mother is always the most stable or the better parent. Sometimes it's 50-50. Sometimes it's the mother, sometimes it's the father who's even more stable maybe with the kids. We don't know. So it's I think that's why mostly I see cases of alienation where the father is the one who has a big problem getting access, and children are being very much subjected to a manipulation in the home to really, be very loyal to the parent they live with, because they have to. They're afraid of losing the other parent too, because they're witnessing what can happen, that one parent just kind of disappears. So that's a very tragic issue that I don't want to go in too much depth today, just so people know it, maybe because maybe you know somebody and you know that they're facing alienation, which is a very hurtful, let's say, phenomena that is a worldwide issue. It doesn't stop here. You see it everywhere. So I started really helping fathers in the reconnection process. Every father, his situation is super different. Some of them are similar. So those are, I guess, the easier ones, where I actually know there is a pattern and I can be very supportive and give them some tools there. Um, but I actually ended up doing this because I saw that my father was incapable of reconnecting with me, even though I was willing to. So it needs to be, come from both sides. And the father is actually the one who needs to take responsibility there to, like, pick you up again where he left you somehow. So I began to think, like, there are so many dads out there who want to reconnect and don't know how. What would I teach my dad if he was willing to learn, and if he was a coachable person? And they're actually my passion and my method for actually doing this was born because I couldn't find any resource out there. So I thought maybe I need to do it myself. And that's why I ended up doing something that I know is a bit rare. And people sometimes ask twice, like, but what do you really do? So that's why I ended up spending so many hours on this thing, because I needed to heal in part. from fatherless upbringing and from abandonment issues and from many things that you face when you grow up. And some of the years of your upbringing, you don't know if your father is dead or alive because he's just gone. And it happens to many, many kids. And I think that goes also, it is a bit linked to that whole tendency that we have seen the last decades, that we have been fed the idea that, fathers are not really that necessary because women can be independent and do just fine with the kids, which I have to say, my mother believed too. But she saw in the end that, yes, fathers are super important and children have issues, even her children. Um, and that's why I think it will be very interesting today when we go through some of the effects of fatherless upbringing, because some of them sound obvious and many others don't really sound obvious. And we don't think of those when we see a child who's growing up maybe just with the mom.
Okay, that's I can't wait to do this because there's so many people that I know personally, and then obviously through my page and on all that, I get these questions constantly, and 100% why we want to start this educational series, and your information is just going to be so powerful, and so coming from your own, like you say, your own personal experience and having to couldn't find the resources out there, and you basically came up with this yourself, and not only to heal yourself but to try and help your father, and then to be able to help others. It's truly amazing. So thank you for that, and can't wait to hear more.
Okay, so yes, I'm going to start, I think, with a few facts and pieces of data that I came across when I started to Google more often and, define my choice a bit better, because it's always the same with the search engines. The better questions you ask, the better answers you start getting. But sometimes until you don't know what you're dealing with, you don't, type in the right words maybe. And then you find different data from different countries. But once you have done like your tour on fatherlessness in daughters, in boys, the consequences of it, the statistics, you see that it's pretty much the same in many Western countries. So there is a page actually called Canadian Association for Equality that talks a lot about fathers. Maybe you know that one even. So there you find amazing explanation and content for this. It's a very good page. For the States, you have a lot as well. For the UK, for Germany also, some studies already in the 90s were conducted in cities like Berlin, millions of people, and see what happens with kids raised by single moms. And some of the things we know today is that even a lady who's pregnant and is alone, the father is not around, the chances of this lady losing that pregnancy in the first few months, the chances are higher if the father is not around. So that's already one thing to start with. If then this lady gives birth, the cycle is repeating itself, or the tendency, let's say, that the child has more chances of survival the first few weeks outside the womb if the father is there. If the mother is alone, the risk of actually losing that kid, infant mortality actually increases if fathers are not around. And we're talking about Western countries with hospitals where every woman pretty much can go and have medical assistance, but that has even an influence on it. And I found that pretty amazing when I was reading it the first time. And then I passed on to what happens to the kids that are toddlers that go to school, because I only knew my personal experience. And I, for example, had very good grades. I did have no problem with school, really. But I know today, and I think many people know this one, it's one of the obvious ones that people talk about, that most school dropouts before the age of 18 are fatherless children. So already the success in the school system it has a big effect on that if you're raised without a father in the home. Also, the chances of being bullied or abused outside the home increase dramatically. In my case, I know that one. I was bullied in school for a considerable amount of time. Later, then it got better, but it was difficult for my mom to find out because, she couldn't be there all the time. And my mom actually was a very capable single mom. I mean, she even had an education. Her first profession that she learned back in Germany was actually kindergarten teacher. So she was well read in children's psychology. She loved children. She was very practical, very nurturing with us. I mean, I was lucky to have a single mom who was, I mean, quite capable of always finding some kind of work occupation. So she could be with us once we were out of school, which was holy to her to be at home almost every day, not to hire strangers to look after us when we got out of school. But even then, I was bullied in school and she didn't find out because, and I know this is something I share with many fatherless daughters, if we're the firstborns, we of course always tend to feel like the duty of being responsible and taking care of the younger sibling maybe, and helping your mom because she's working so hard and she's on her own. So to actually avoid telling your mom that you have a problem, to not bother your mother with problems, you just don't say anything because you think, I just got to go through this on my own. And that's something children tend to do, to avoid conflict. Um, they feel really responsible for maybe the peace in the household, or that the mother feels good because they feel that the mom is sacrificing herself maybe for the children. So these are things that are very common. I mean, bullying in school. Also, I mean, sadly, sexual abuse in and outside the home. Fatherless children are at a much higher risk of being subjected to that. Because of course, I mean, we see a lot of predators in homes where the biological father isn't there. We see much more aggressiveness and physical abuse, also psychological abuse in households where a stepfather is there. And I don't want people here to feel bad about this, like, oh, but I had a great stepdad. So did I. By the time I was 11, 12, my mom remarried, and it was an awesome, very kind, responsible father figure. But for me, my development years had already passed. So all the learned behaviors before age 8, 10, 12, it's very difficult to get rid of that and transform that into something else very quickly. You need to, I think, grow up and increase your awareness a lot and come to a point where you're conscious of what is happening. And mostly you don't know that because you like downloaded all these behaviors and patterns of thought and whatever by just being in that environment. You learn it without realizing what you're actually learning. And here comes the key. When fathers ask me, but my daughter is so smart. If she grew up fatherless, she should have known better with her own kids. Why is she ending up now divorced and raising kids alone? Well, because that's what she learned unconsciously. That's a normalcy that she grew up with. That was her life. So she doesn't really feel that something's really off. It's like, okay, after all, my mom was single as well. I can do it too. So it's not true that we mostly do, you know, we do the opposite because we
Yeah,
know that was not good. We
I've
often
done.
repeat
I,
behaviors that we have learned, right?
that's what I was going to say. I've done some reading on that where you actually, you know, what you learned as growing up, you would think that would be the furthest thing from what you would do or be part of. But a lot of people who were abused growing up end up abusing as well. And like you said, with parental alienation and that earlier, if they grew up without one parent around, or they believe they can do it themselves, and so
Hmm.
yeah, the pattern definitely does repeat itself.
Yes, it does. And it takes really one person to start being aware and conscious and to seek some help, because until I couldn't do that and see that I needed help, not just a therapist, but maybe really more information, more knowledge to understand what had happened to me, why I had certain difficulties with bonding with certain people, with trust. A lot of fatherless children have big trust issues. They have problems maintaining a harmonious relationship. That's why so many fatherless daughters end up raising kids by themselves or divorced once, twice, or three times. The same happens to the boys, actually. They usually have more trouble than kids who were raised by two parents in a more solid household. They often end up with big trust issues. We have more difficulty to commit. We are less good in problem solving. Fatherless children already at an early age are less empathetic. So they are less socially adjusted and they display more problems when it comes to socializing and to social interaction and how do they call it? Yeah, also all those in toddlers, when you see toddlers that are very distressed and seem to be not to adjust very well, you know, those tantrums that are not 15 minutes but 45 minutes up to an hour, toddlers that really seem to be super anxious and yeah, where the mother says, well, I don't know, most, you know, in fatherless kids you have that in a much bigger percentage, kids that are already having problems because they're emotionally not that stable, which is very important. Emotional stability is actually a problem in fatherless kids because you lack protection from a male father figure. You lack that kind of affirmation. And mostly for girls, that's a big problem. If you're a girl and you never had a father saying, look, you know, I got this, and no matter what happens, I'm here to protect you. And look, these are the guys you shouldn't be around, you know, and this is a guy who will not respect you. If you never see a father, your father treating your mom with respect and a healthy interaction between them, how do you know how to deal with a boyfriend or how to look for the good guys? If maybe your mom had 3 boyfriends in 3 years who were very bad guys, because she's maybe also fatherless, and for her it's very difficult to select somebody she's not bonding because of trauma. There is a very interesting, it's a very interesting topic. Fatherlessness often goes together with trauma, and then you tend to bond with people who are traumatized as well, and you feel like addicted to that bond, and you feel understood because the other person also went through something similar, but that usually doesn't create anything better. You're caught up in that cycle of trauma bonding. So that's why, you know, drama, not a good adjustment, not good at solving problems, is very common in fatherless children. And you see it already in school. If they're actually efficient in solving problems, or if they really lack that ability and are really negative, can't hold positive thinking patterns that easily, that is also something that you see in fatherless kids a lot. And
I would think that you mentioned the trauma bonding, that makes a lot of sense. You're seeking out someone who's maybe been through something that you have as well, and think that you'll be able to kind of right that wrong, but you really don't have the tools or the, you know, you haven't moved past it in order to be able to do that. But and I would also think that one thing that I've heard a lot about, and even little, you know, people tend to, you're looking for being accepted and looking for that approval, and you wind up associating with the wrong crowd. You know, getting but they make you feel welcomed or make you feel that love that you're missing or whatever. But it ends up often being, like I say, just the wrong people that you want to let in on your life.
yes, of course. And that's why, I mean, it always sounds very funny and very triggering, but I've posted things like, you know, if a daughter hasn't got a dad to learn from, you usually end up going for the low quality men out there who are maybe flashy or, you know, or total douchebags. It wasn't that much my case, for example. That one I kind of could avoid. because I became very cautious, because I didn't trust that much. So I became very cautious, and I didn't really, go and have conversation with anyone, or engage in anything too early. But of course, girls who are fatherless lack that approval. So you seek approval from men elsewhere, and you want to get his attention. So you're willing to do very strange things to prove that you're good enough. So he cares. So he shows you that he cares and that you're valuable. And of course, many men are going to take advantage of a girl who's trying so hard to be accepted that she'll just do anything, or take anything, and not even realize that she doesn't deserve that. It just, I mean, we really need to differentiate here. People always say yes, but you can't discriminate people or think that they're like worse quality people just because they're fatherless. No, of course not. I just was as valuable as any other kid, and I was fatherless. But it's very good to be aware of these things. Also, if you're a man and you're maybe married to a wonderful lady who was raised fatherless, it's good if you're aware of why she's having that extra need of approval sometimes, that maybe you've told her already that she's great, and she just keeps telling you, but is this really good? And she feels the need to always get extra attention, extra approval. You need to hug her a lot sometimes, and that's just because she didn't have a dad doing these things. And I have coached men who were really sad about the fact that they got divorced because after 10 years, they didn't know how to handle the fatherlessness issues the wife had. And nobody explained to them how to deal with that. And I think actually, if they would have been a bit educated on it, they could have used it to their benefit, and even helped her. Just knowing what these signs mean, and that sometimes she doesn't really need to for you to do anything extraordinary. She just doesn't have that practice here in her brain to have a man saying, yes, you're good enough and you're worth it, and that's just fine. You don't need to do anything extra. This is good. Even if you make mistakes, I love you anyways. Or if you screw up something, it doesn't mean you're less valuable, or I won't respect you or love you anymore. And these behaviors are really common in fatherless girls. Fatherless boys, of course, also are much more likely to end up with the wrong crowd on the street if a father isn't there. Because fatherless kids are, of course, a big percentage of them are often unsupervised, because the one parent they have in the home, of course, needs to make ends meet. And if you don't have like that solid structure at home, of course, you go and try to get it somewhere else. So in boys, that's something very important, that they have alternative father figures, that they maybe have a very solid uncle, or maybe the mom has a very good boyfriend who she remarries, and this guy maybe is very good at implementing some structure and giving some nurturing, because women do nurture different as men. There really are differences. This is also something important. Sometimes I look down because I look at my notes, and this one I included because we even have, you see, we have very relatively recent studies conducted in several countries who actually prove the brain activity and how certain parts of the brain that are triggered or really active work different in men and in women depending on what they do with their kids. That is really important because it debunks big time that ideology that we're all the same. So, don't bother. Doesn't matter if you have a mom and a dad or just one. Doesn't matter, because we're all the same. So we don't need father figures. Yes, we do. We need more solid masculine role models, not less, because in society it hasn't given us anything really positive. If the number of fatherless children increases and society doesn't benefit from it, it goes worse. That's why you can actually predict and calculate. People who know how to do these things, they know. I'm not a scientist in that thing, so I don't know, but they know how to to actually measure the success of a community, no matter if it's a village or a group of people or a country, depending on the number of fathers that are active and present in the homes in that community.
Well, that's the big my big thing for this year is getting these numbers and some of these statistics out there for people, because they're so eye-opening. I mean, I've read tons of articles on that and stuff like that, but from everything I'm seeing, I'll just give a range, because there is a range. But I mean, when you were mentioning some of those things that kids, so high school dropout percentage, teenage pregnancy,
Yes.
crime, incarceration, alcohol and drug abuse,
Yes, obesity,
yeah,
and eating
obesity,
disorders.
poverty and
Very, very much.
homelessness,
Mm-hmm.
all these things. And this number sounds outrageous, but it's a true statistic out there. It's like anywhere from 75 to almost 90% less chance of this happening to kids who grow up with, both parents or a male, especially a male parental role model. If it's not dad, it's someone else, right? But I can't believe that how high these statistics are. And then again, speaking about Windsor, where we live, the drug and crime and homelessness is going through the roof, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do and how to prevent it. And you hear a bunch of people's suggestions, and some of the suggestions are great, but I don't really hear any of them just reverting back to good old fashioned, mom and dad and kids having access to both parents growing up. And I believe a lot of these things can be lowered if we just get people to understand how important fathers are in the home. And then obviously we need the changes in family law and stuff like that to equal out some of these custody hearings and stuff like that. I also, one of the big numbers that I'm hearing is even dads that go to court and are seeking shared custody, which is, if you're in court and you're spending money and you're seeking shared custody, you would assume that that's a pretty respectful dad who wants to be part of their kids' lives. And even those cases, we're talking like 12. It seems to be anywhere from about 9 to 14% end up winning. I hate to use the word winning, that shared custody verdict. So that's a very low number for actual parents who are seeking shared custody. I can't believe it's that low in this day and age. But yeah, like you say, 90, someone told me your kid has an 85% less chance of these things happening. I couldn't imagine, not wanting to take advantage of that, or it's unreal.
It is, and it's a very ugly statistic. And once you, as a fatherless person like I did, start looking everything up, because you say, I don't say any numbers here on purpose because I want people to go and look it up. I don't want them to believe me straight away. I want them to have the experience of going through it and seeing how high that number is in their region, in their country, in other countries, because it doesn't matter in the end what I say. You need to be interested in it and interested in knowing what you can do, if it can benefit you, your kids. Otherwise, people don't just go and, do the work. Why should they if it's not something they're interested in? But go and look it up, and there you will see it. It's even the discipline thing, and people hate to hear this, like, oh, but I'm a lady and I can also discipline my kids. My mother said that to me. I don't see the issue with discipline. I never had problem disciplining my two girls. And I said, look, you're a German lady. Germans have already a lot of discipline in their day-to-day lives and culture. They're a very disciplined culture per se already. If you have to tell me two things about German culture, one of them is discipline and efficiency. So it was something ingrained in her culture. So it wasn't difficult for her to do that. But let's be very honest here. I was a kid who was easy to raise. I was good in school. I wouldn't talk back much. I would take rules. I would just do as I was told. My sister, on the other hand, was wired completely different. She would never do as she was told. So with her, implementing discipline was way more difficult. But of course, my sister and I are 7 years apart. And when my mother remarried, my sister was 3. My development was done. So there she had a man in the house sometimes, also supporting my mother when she wasn't able to do it. So sometimes we trick ourselves even into believing certain things didn't apply to us, but they really do. So if you're not lucky and you don't have kids who naturally seem to be very disciplined and very responsible, you will notice the difference if the father is there or if he's not there. It's not because kids are more scared of the father. That's not the thing. But fathers parent different than mothers. And you can see it in every serious study that when women teach things to their kids, it's a lot more, they talk to them, they do things with them that involve sometimes reading and writing and observing and things like that. And dads are usually the ones who do all different things that maybe the mothers don't find that important, because they just go for different activities that often involve risk, how to measure risk and physical strength, or and that's a very important point I want to talk about here, because people always make such a big debate over this. And I always like to tell my clients that if when you're born, when you're conceived, it's like you have two virtual foundation legs. One is the mother and one is the father, with everything they have. Um, and if one of them is missing soon after birth, for example, it's like this child hasn't got his two foundation legs anymore. You're like walking with a stick to replace the other somehow. So in some aspects, you can't be as fast as the others. You try to find ways to move as good as the others, but maybe you wonder why you can't, why you seem to be detached from other people. People see that there's something wrong with you, but maybe don't talk about it. And there is something's off maybe, but nobody tells you that maybe you should have the right to talk about it. People try to tell you that it's all fine, although you don't have a dad. But some kids, most kids know at a certain age. So if you're supposed to have those two foundations, just imagine what happens in a construction building if you take one of those pillars just away. You start doing something there to support the house so it doesn't fall down. And that's, like, for me, a very good metaphor to understand fatherless upbringing. Once you also become conscious of the fact that that's different for you in your home than it is for Mary or Paul in their homes, where the father has done a lot of things that nobody did with you. And here we come with the thing I want to talk about. Many people don't know this because it's not that common knowledge, I think. The brain we have develops from bottom to top. So this part over here, the prefrontal cortex, is the last one to develop. That's why back in the day when children were considered adults at 21, not at 18, actually it made a lot of sense when we look at the development, because the last researches show that even at age 20, often the prefrontal cortex is still not developed as it should be in an adult person. So it takes a long time. That's why it's so devastating if kids take drugs or drink alcohol, because the brain is still in development and the whole thing is being wired. And if you interrupt that process or overstimulate it, it can be a true disaster. So then you have kids at 16 who have been, I don't know, doing what drugs at 14, and you wonder why they can never measure risk. Well, something is already damaged, because even without taking any drugs, having a healthy development, the prefrontal cortex is that one that really helps you make decisions, measure risk and consequences, um, have a better overview of social interaction, which things that you do might be socially expected, what reaction people could have. There is a really good, I don't always recommend this one because sometimes the information might not be that reliable, but Wikipedia has a great, great definition of the functions of the prefrontal cortex. It's a really good one, because once you read it, you say, yes, that's why my daughter at 15 sometimes seems to be, not smart enough. Couldn't she see that it was a bad idea to do so and so? No, she actually couldn't. So when we have this in mind, And then we look at documentary, we watch a documentary with lions in Africa somewhere, in Tanzania maybe, and you see the daddy lion playing with the baby lions, and they're measuring the strength and playing, doing rough and tumble play like you do with your kids too, right? That helps develop the prefrontal cortex. There, these things they shape themselves here, like to measure the strength and the risk and what can I do, what can I not do. And if a child always has the mother, and mothers are much less likely to do rough and tumble play because we don't naturally feel that much arousal and pleasure. And has been studied looking inside the brain during the whole play with the kids. And there are certain parts of the brain that are extremely active in fathers during rough and tumble play. And that same effect is observed in mothers when nurturing the children. So if somebody wants to tell me, oh no, but I'm a mom and I do rough and tumble play every day, well, then that's something you enjoy for some reason and it's perfect. But most kids will not do that with their mother. I've never done that with my daughter and I don't know why. She doesn't do that with me. She doesn't jump on me and try to fight me physically. But with my partner, who's actually her stepdad, she does this with him all the time. So up until this day, I have problems with activities that might involve physical risk. I'm very afraid of those. I can't do certain things. It's very hard for me to do. And my daughter has no trouble with those.
Yeah.
So
no, I think we need to embrace the different parenting styles, and
yes,
instead of, we don't, the more options you provide, obviously the better. But yeah, dads are known for the rough and tumble play, and I like I say, I think instead of trying to almost be uniform, the different styles are much more beneficial.
yes. So if you're a couple and there are certain activities the father for some reason doesn't want to do because it feels very awkward to him, or he just doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't enjoy it at all, and the children notice if you don't enjoy it at all, do other things that you maybe are super good at. And that's when I always like to address mothers who for some reason feel offended maybe or uneasy when the husbands say, look, you want me to do all of these things with the kids, but there are some things I actually don't want to do. Why can't I do different things? Just let him be. The same way you have activities you like a lot, maybe he doesn't like the ones you think he should do. So we need to respect, like you said, each other's parenting styles. The good thing is some mothers are even worried when fathers do rough and tumble play with the kids that they might get hurt or something. Just let him do it. It's a very healthy part of the development. And nowadays you have so many kids at home playing video games or doing things that don't involve physical risk at all. But the kids need to go through that process. We all did climb on trees and do these things that maybe many kids today actually don't, because they think it's dangerous or they just don't go outside to do these things. And that's very important for boys also, to develop physically, that they need to measure the strength and to see what they can do. And sometimes to be exhausted physically from trying out these things and being outside, moving. The kids are meant to be moving much more than they do today. And oftentimes, really, fathers are the ones who say, okay, let's grab a ball and go outside. It's because we're often very different. And of course, yes, you're going to have fathers who maybe have a very intellectual approach and they're going to read books with their kids and have several interests that maybe don't involve going outside. But okay, fine, maybe they can do the other thing with someone else. But I think it's just a shame that we have had this tendency for decades to say that men should be more involved, that they should be more emotionally intelligent, or that they should also, do all these things that were more attributed to women. And now often when they want to do it, you don't see that the dads are really included, because like you say, the baby mother groups, you see them advertised everywhere, but the fathers are often not really that included, because we assume they're maybe not interested in doing those things. And many fathers actually want to do activities, and some mothers actually feel forced to do certain activities mothers do and hate it. So I'm one of those. I didn't like the typical activities mothers did with the babies. Some of them I just didn't enjoy, so I did different stuff. So just embrace your qualities. Sometimes you will have to get out of your comfort zone, but to have the father involved is so important. So
Yeah,
important,
I
for kids to be socially adjusted, to have self-confidence. Fatherless children feel unworthy. They feel worthless. They have low self-worth, and that's a big problem to move through the world and through society.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just going to say on your last point there. I took part in an educational Zoom last week, and they spoke about dads not just doing the rough and tumble, but getting involved in all the other things too, and
Yes.
even simply changing diapers and stuff like that. Where it was kind of like meant to be a little bit of a joking thing, but it was a learning example. But the diaper
Mm,
might not have got changed the exact same way the mom would do it, but the end result was the diaper got changed. And a lot of couples
yes.
found that they were fighting about, well, you're supposed to fold it from this way to that way, whereas the other, the dad would do it the other way. But in the end, it got changed, and that, basically trying to celebrate the overall result of trying things and still accomplishing them. And then even other things later on when the child's a bit older, if you're teaching them to fold laundry or whatever, maybe both parents fold a different way, which sounds very trivial, but the parents were getting upset with each other because they know it's supposed to be this way. No, it's supposed to be that way. Well, hey, at least it's done. But then the child
Hmm.
also gets both points of view, gets both shown both ways, and they can use
That's
their
it.
own mind to make which way they feel is better, and maybe they come up with even a better way altogether. So just maybe not having such high expectations, and when setting things out for dads to do, instead of coming from a telling perspective to just allowing them to have their own creativity and freedom to do it their way, but
Yes.
as long as it's getting done.
Hmm. Yes, no, it's totally true. I mean, um, I have to admit, when I was a young mother, in the beginning, I was very happy that he, wasn't afraid to take the baby or to change the diaper. But well, when they were things where he felt he wasn't doing it good or he was insecure, he would just call me and ask for help, like, "Oh, I feel that you do it better, can you show me how you do it? Because I don't know." Um, some fathers feel very secure changing a diaper, some don't. And I've seen mothers who do very badly the first time because they feel they're going to break that small creature, so they don't even touch the baby with security. So the baby starts crying because it needs to be, taken in a secure manner, like to feel protected somehow. Um, so I think it's often very good to listen to your instinct, and we need to really allow fathers to do certain things, because I've heard this a million times, like, "Oh, he doesn't do much with the kids." Well, do you really let him? Because some fathers also, often to avoid conflict, they end up not getting involved in certain things
Mhm.
because they say, "Oh, she gets so upset," or "She thinks I can't do it." So, well, haven't we been hearing for decades that men, show emotions too, or maybe feel bad too, but just don't speak up so quickly or something? Just talk about it, and you can even negotiate if you see that something doesn't suit you, like, "Oh, maybe you can do this, I don't really like this." um and we need to respect it. It's the same as when you're going to give birth. Some mothers are so obsessed with the fact that the father needs to be in the delivery room. Some men just don't want to do that. They think they're going to pass out. They just don't feel at ease with that idea. And I think we also need to respect that. Some fathers are going to be, "Yes, of course, I'm coming in. And, am I allowed to film?" And other dads will say, "No, because I will get so worried and so scared and I'm going to pass out. I'm going to fall to the floor and the doctors will have to carry me out." It's going to be a disaster. I've heard those stories. So there is not a pattern that everyone has to follow the same way. But it's insane to still tell people, or that we see it so much in the media, where single mothers are often like celebrated, like it was a very good thing to show that you're so capable, you can even raise kids by yourself. And it's not something you really want to do. I mean, I had the experience for 8 years after I got divorced, and people maybe now are thinking, oh, but wasn't she saying that she was, fatherless as a kid? Why didn't she do better? Because of what we talked about. It was a learned behavior for me. And having my daughter actually triggered my will to see that I needed to do something to break that cycle. So my daughter will not do the same when she's older. So she will not grow up the same way. So I can help her deal with the situation way better. And she's having a different childhood than I'm having, although her father lives far away. But there is even ways to maintain a father-daughter bond long distance. You can make it happen. I know. I have clients who come for advice for this. It's doable. I know even from somebody in my family, the father lived very far away, but he managed to make his daughter know that she was loved, that he was going to come visit. When he came visit, he would take her everywhere. And for her, it was very clear who dad was, although he didn't live there at
Yeah,
the same time,
it's not always
it,
quantity, it's quality,
yes,
Obviously the quality of the
yes.
whatever the visit is, or the Zoom meeting, or FaceTime, whatever, doesn't always have to be quantity.
Mm. And it always, it goes both ways. There's long distance dads who maintain the bond very well. And then there is dads who live in the home and the children display all the symptoms of fatherlessness because they don't engage with their children. They're not there that often. They maybe um, arrive home, have dinner, and say, okay, I'm off. I'm going to the office to work a few more hours. So the kids see the dad 1 hour a day if they're lucky, or they're divorced and he doesn't show up much because maybe his career takes him overseas and he doesn't really seem to manage his priorities that well. So the kid feels that the father is somehow gone. And to have the fathers involved and to encourage also dads to learn about how important they are and how positively the kids are impacted by having a dad at home, being emotionally available and present. Doesn't matter if you like playing all the time. You don't have to do fancy things that cost money. Children don't care about these things.
Well,
Children really,
funny you said that, because with the pandemic and staying at home and all that, I used to always think that I had to hit a home run every time I saw my daughter or had time with her. And we'd go all kinds of places, and it was $40, $80, $60 here or there out the window every time.
yeah,
And with the pandemic, one of the things that taught me, that I learned from it, just spending the time. I said one day, I said, what's your favorite thing to do with dad? And I was waiting for her to say something that she missed, that we hadn't done in a while, like I say, going to an amusement park, or something
mm-hmm.
like that. And she said that it almost made me cry, to be honest. She said, I just like to sit at the table and color with you. And I'm like, like
Yes,
that cost me 50 cents, and that was
yes,
her favorite thing. I couldn't believe that response.
that's it. And I really think that, I mean, this is a subject I have to talk through with many of my coaching clients as well, because they often parent out of guilt. Like, I'm out of the home a lot, so when I see them, I need to show them that I'm willing to do everything, that is like their favorite thing. Or then they spend a lot of money, but then they don't have enough for different things. And I tell them, your children they should not learn that money is a currency to use to show love or appreciation. So if you use the wrong currency, um, then you teach kids that money and material things really are like showing them how valuable they are. So you never can or should base it on that. And of course, the last, this is maybe how many days ago? 4 days ago, that somebody told me that he read an article of a mother who was homeschooling her kids because she was a teacher. She didn't like the school system, and she specializes now in even creating material for kids that are homeschooled. And she said, one of the first things I noticed was that if I was more with my kids, not always doing school, but cooking, showing them how to buy the food at the market, how to count, the money that we need, involving them in life so they get life skills, the less money she would spend on stuff that wasn't needed, on stuff that wasn't available. So oftentimes this model that we have ended up with, that both parents are working, it often doesn't pay off.
Right.
Because children don't learn more by having more pairs of shoes. They're not happier by having more pairs of shoes or a holiday that is a bit more expensive. They feel at home where the parents are. And even if I've been single for some time. I even needed resources from the German government here because I really didn't know what to do. I must admit, when she was 2 and I was divorced, I felt super helpless. I didn't know what to do. And I know many mothers maybe manage better, but I really didn't have the strength at that moment. And I felt very helpless. I didn't know how other mothers do it, to leave such a small child with strangers, to go work 8 hours. I got a job and I left it after a month because I suffered. I was crying because I couldn't leave her with other people. Again, respect everyone's choices. Not everyone is the same. And I had very little money because I decided to work less, to do things that I could do partially from home, so I could be with her more time, and she would only go to like a kindergarten group a few hours a day. And I remember people telling me, no, but you need to work more, otherwise you can't afford anything, and she's going to be discriminated because she doesn't have this and that. And I said, look, I think she's actually very healthy, and I invest in healthy food. I invest in being with her, and I don't see that she has any difficulty with anything. She feels safe when I'm at home,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
she isn't abandoned or with other people. You don't want children to develop abandonment issues or having these fears that they're too many hours alone without being able to call dad or mom, and that somebody actually is available. So I saw it from my own experience. My daughter didn't become smarter or better socially adjusted or better, or didn't have better empathy by having a holiday that was more expensive, and that to afford this, I would leave her alone or with other people 8 hours a day. She benefited from having at least, one parent. So you really need to show that you're present, and it has nothing to do with money. Otherwise, poor people go to a country where people maybe are, don't have many resources. How could they be good parents if it's subjected to money? Being a good parent has nothing to do with that. There is people growing up poor, but they have good values. They learn discipline. They learn how important family is. They learn how to love and help other people. They can get an education too. Fathers are super important, and they transmit a sense of security and of protection. That's why, by the way, many dads who after years of absence, encounter a daughter who's a teenager or a young woman, they often don't understand that she's so angry because maybe many things happened to her and many people maybe treated her badly. And those things would not have happened if he had been there. And that's why we often feel very angry, because once the father figure is not there, you're like on a plate. And if you actually go through that childhood without major harm, one part is luck, and the other part is that you maybe woke up very early on and started to be aware of things, or had a mother who was very capable and aware. But you can't expect things to just work out the same if the father is not there.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I made the choice to have to switch shifts at my job to be able to be available for my daughter in the mornings. We didn't have to use daycare. I'm very proud of that. Our
Yes,
bond,
you can be. You really can be.
like our bond is great. And I fully believe in everything that you're saying. And obviously I've read the articles and seen all the percentages as well. And it doesn't guarantee, there's no guarantee, obviously we're not guaranteeing anything, but at least we're showing the examples and what can happen positive and negative. So it's been great. I don't want to rush this by any means, but I'm looking at our time, and I know it's probably you're 6 hours difference, so it's getting late at your time. If there's
Oh,
anything
but it's
else,
fine.
okay. If
It's
there's
fine.
anything
Don't
else
bother.
if you wanted to bring up, or what I was going to say is, I kind of wrote down a couple questions that I had for you. And one of them was, how much opposition or resentment, even perhaps, do you feel that a lot from mothers, thinking that, because you are talking so much about the importance of fathers and all the negative consequences of fatherlessness, or are you, do you get a lot of heat? Are you called a traitor, or what are some of the things that you've heard and had to deal with?
I have to say, all the people I know personally, or that I am in touch with, because they're also like in the fathers' rights movement, or some of them are really focused on parental alienation. I'm not really just focused on that, because I help fathers who have been away from their daughters for many, many reasons. Fatherless upbringing because of alienation is just one of them, and it's not always my main focus. So I focus a lot on the importance of fathers, and yes, often I also post stuff where I call out, the mothers, and I say, look, mothers, if you prevent the father from being there and you actively do this, your children are going to find out what happened, and they're not going to be happy. So when I post something like that, yes, sometimes a lady comments like, this happens to me too, you talk too much about fathers, or why don't you extend your coaching to mothers? And then I just can be honest and say, look, there is so much resources and help for mothers, there is much less for fathers, and this is just what I specialize in. And I don't feel that I need to cover, everybody. But if you're a mom and you need help or you want my advice, you can reach out too. I won't reject you or anything, but mostly I work with men, with fathers. I don't get that much of a shitstorm, let's say. I'm just saying the word now because that's what it's called. And I think it's because I'm a mom, because I've been a single mother and I didn't receive any child support, even though I was one of those who would have needed it to really survive better. So I know what that's like, to really say, okay, let's drop it. Let's work on your own stuff. Don't fight anymore. I don't want more negativity. Um, I went through years where my ex-husband was really sick, physically and mentally ill, and couldn't take care of his daughter. So I had to do all the work myself. And I was raised fatherless. So I think they have less stuff like to poke at when it's, so I think that's why I might get less negative messages. I don't get any hate mails or anything. And I know there is a lady who talks about parental alienation and helps fathers in the early stages. She gets a lot of it. Every time she helps a father, he gets into coaching with her, she needs to tell this father to unfollow her. Otherwise, the ex-wife will start harassing her on social media. Those extreme things where people put up fake profiles and start harassing others, and those things, strangely, and I think luckily, don't really happen to me that much. I don't know exactly why it is, but I think they maybe find less, they feel less triggered, because I know also as a mother how it is to go through a situation where I felt in disadvantage as well, or felt like a victim for some years. But you really need to drop the victim up status, the victim poor me thing, and really start taking action and being responsible. And of course, it wasn't my fault to grow up fatherless, but you choose if you want to get over it and heal and do some work, which is hard work to do, or if you want to claim, that you were just unfairly treated, so now you expect to be treated in a special manner by everybody, which isn't like that. You're not entitled to things just because your parents did something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good question, and I get it a lot, but I mean, fingers crossed. Sometimes I try not to question it, but I don't get that much hate from people.
Well, that's great to hear, and how I started this in the beginning. Like this is not a competition between moms and dads. This
Hmm.
is, it's a collaboration, and it doesn't matter. One of the things I say to people is I consider everyone a co-parent, and it doesn't
Yes.
matter what your relationship status is. You can be married, divorced, whatever. You're co-parenting on some level with somebody. Hopefully, if both parents are involved, right? So, like I say, it's a collaboration. It's not a competition. And if your true actual interest, our goal is for what's best for the children,
Hmm.
children's need mom and dad,
Yes.
or a strong male or female parental role model. Like again,
Hmm.
grandma, grandpa, whoever, step parent. But there has to be both, or something close to that for these, or these percentages and odds and stuff that we talked about earlier wouldn't exist, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's there. I mean, we have seen it going on for a long time. And um, one very curious comment I got a few days ago was a young lady, like in her 20s, saying that what I was posting, like saying, children need their mother and their father. Um, and she said, "This is so wrong. What about same-sex couples that have children?" And I said, "Look, honestly, we still don't have reliable data on knowing how these kids grow up or what the consequences are. So I really can't talk about those. And I really don't dislike people just because of those things, if they're two men or two women and their parents. Um, but I just can talk about what I know and what I've personally experienced and what I see that works in order to help fathers to access their daughters better. Because there is many, I mean, that's a really complex, multi-layered thing. That's why people often assume that men who don't see their daughters or boys, it's because they're not interested. Like, oh, but just call your children. It's not about that, it's always something else going on. And there are often many reasons why this man stopped calling his children. They don't have to make sense to us. But that's why, I always need to listen to them without any judgment to really understand what went down so I can see what dynamics need to be changed and how we can do something about it now without talking badly about mothers. That's also something I don't like. I mean, I don't like pages where all they do is talk badly about mothers because, well, I'm a mother as well. I know many moms just try their best. Um, and I guess those things come out of anger, people that are still stuck in the anger, but there is nothing constructive or positive about that. That's why I like doing this today with you guys, because it matches my message a lot, that it's about doing something positive out of, with what we have, um, and encourage others to really see that it's positive and to try. You don't even have to understand why, you just can do it and then enjoy the process.
Right. Well, that was actually going to be my good segue into my final question that I had for you. What I really wanted to know is what do you want people to take away from this the most today once they've watched this? What are some of the, everything you've said is important and the whole everything, but what are some of the things you really want people to take away from this and remember after watching it?
Um, it is a good question, and it's great to close this. It's gonna be very well rounded, I think. Um, the most important thing, I mean, there are three. I think one of them is um, that it's important to understand why fathers are important, and if you yourself don't know, or you have relatives who are raising kids without fathers and don't seem to be aware, I mean, share this knowledge with people. And you can always tell people, don't believe me, look it up. There is very valuable information out there. The more we know about these things, the better can we understand, and in this way also influence positively other people and be supportive of people who maybe, need help. Um, Second would be that exactly what you said, that this is not a competition where mothers or fathers have to win. This is very important when people get separated or divorced. It's not about you winning. In the end, you all lose and the children lose big time if you make this about winning. So it sounds so obvious when people say, but I'm going to court and I want to win. Of course, that's how we're taught to think about it. And of course, if you have to play that difficult game of family court, of course, yes, you play it and you want to win it. But we always need to keep in mind that the children don't win. They're always losing. They don't want to choose between mom and dad. They don't want to be in the middle. They want to have peace, and they want to be allowed to love both parents and to be with both parents, because they're the only ones that are entitled to something, which is having both parents loving them. They're really entitled to that from birth. So
Yeah,
this is very important.
family court is like, court was not originally designed to determine who gets children, custody of children. Court was decided for, that was supposed to be for property crimes and against humanity and property. It was not designed for children and splitting the homes and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's like you said, there's, in this day and age, when you hear that a father got shared custody, the stereotype is almost like, oh, what did the mom do so wrong? You know, like it's like it's a surprise, and it's so, that's so amazing to me in this day and age. And you know, like, again, what is best for the children? I can't believe there's not a shared parenting law. You know, splits. You walk into the court and it's 50-50, and then you kind of go from there, rather than, sadly, almost being 100-0, and you got to work your way towards something, right? But hopefully someday there's a shared parenting law that gets passed where that's just the standard when you first walk into court. But I think we're still probably a long ways away from that, sadly. But
yes, sadly. I mean, sadly, fathers have to prove in court that they are good parents, when before stepping into court, they maybe have had a normal family life, you know, but the mothers never have to prove that they're actually fit parents. It's assumed that they are because they're the moms. And of course, the most women, of course, are, you know, but there is much, you know, there is a lot of divorces going on. Also, parents who never were married, and then the father doesn't have any rights, which is not the same in every country. In some countries, the fathers have parental rights, even if they're not married, because the law is just different. But we need to get rid of that idea that a father is like a second-class parent who's a bonus, a positive bonus the kids can have. No, he's not a bonus. He's an essential part of the whole thing. And just preventing a kid actively from having that, or judges giving the children to the mom and just turning the dad into a visitor, that's heartbreaking. You know, the children don't want the dad just to show up every other weekend. Nobody wants that, but they do it anyway. So yes, this is a whole different subject, family court. I don't even like often to talk about it because it's such a difficult thing. But actually, the third thing that I want people to take away from this is you can always only lead by example. So the more time you spend with your kids, you influence other people with your behavior. So when you invite friends over, you know, I, as a single mom, learned so much seeing good fathers beautifully parenting their children. I didn't learn that as a kid. I learned that men were irresponsible, not supportive, disrespectful, didn't provide, didn't care about the kids. And I had to learn, once I had my daughter, from my neighborhood, that there were a lot of awesome fathers. So you educate people and you encourage people with what you do in your home. That's why I always tell people, don't pass judgment on another parent if you don't have your family in order, if maybe you're not doing much for your children because you think that your career is more important. But a 3-year-old doesn't care about your career. He wants his dad and his mom. So really have your priorities straight and really try to practice these things yourself, because this can strengthen, you know, a whole community very much. And that's why what you do is so effective, and so many people like to be involved in it, because you see, if they can do it, so can I. And I'm invited and they support me. If I maybe don't have a dad, my child can be around other dads, which is very, very helpful. So you start supporting also those where maybe the dad just isn't there, and you do it by example, starting it in your own home.
Excellent points, very excellent. And I laugh because another one of the reasons why I started fantastic fathers originally was when my daughter was born and I had questions, could have been about anything, changing diapers or sleeping through the night, whatever it was, didn't matter. But even my own first thought was to seek out a mom to ask the question. And then one day it just kind of hit me. I'm like, I have 3 or 4 really close friends who are dads, and they're great dads. And I'm like, how come I never asked them? And that was kind of another one of the driving forces that started me to do what I did with this. And you'd mentioned too about strengthening the community and all that. It's stronger families build stronger communities, and that's one of the things I want people to take away from this Zoom today is these statistics that we had mentioned, and the much less chance of a child dropping out of school or becoming teenage pregnant, crime, drugs, addiction, poverty. All these things there is a direct link to how they grow up, and whether mom and dad was around or not. So it's huge right from day one. And if there's sometimes when I'm going around and I'm trying to search for sponsors and stuff like that, and someone will say, well, I don't have kids, well, why should I care about what you're doing? And what I say is, well, have you ever sat around with your friends or somebody and you're complaining about where your income tax dollars are going to homelessness or drug addiction or rehab and all that? I go, we're really trying to combat that here. And that's one of our major educational things that I want people to take away from what we're doing.
Of course, it impacts everybody. It impacts everybody. And sometimes people say, well, but these kids can make their own choices. There is actually something biochemically that makes you more susceptible to abusing substances growing up without a father. And people don't know that. This we know today. We didn't know 20 years ago. And one last thing I'm going to say, there is a great lady in the United States, in Nevada. She's a female, a lady lawyer who only defends men, mostly in custody cases, because she had a very strong father figure. She is divorced several times, has children from multiple marriages, but she's very aware. And she said that she helps in a shelter where young homeless women are getting help, women that are between the ages of like 17 and 22, something like that. And like for charity and to help the community, she goes there to help as well. And she said that one thing 9 out of 10 of these girls had in common, or even more than 90% of them, is that they had no father in the home. And they all lived on the street at some point. So that's very telling. And she said, well, we can't just, pretend it doesn't exist, and it impacts everybody. So that's very true. Every time somebody says, well, what does this have to do with me? We have no fatherless kids in my family. Well, if maybe your boy's best friend has a problem at home because the father isn't there and the mother doesn't know how to manage, or I don't know. It's always good to be aware.
Well, I'm going to open it up. I don't know if anyone on the Zoom has any questions for you. If you do, now would be a great time to ask. If not, I'm sure that if you wanted to send us the question that you might have, I'd be happy to relay that to Jana, or obviously I'm going to open up the floor for her again to announce her social media pages and what exactly that she does, just to end this off here. So if there is no question at the moment,
they often come later. They come up later sometimes when you listen to the whole thing.
For sure. Yeah. So do me a favor, please just announce your pages that you're on with your social media. And I know you do coaching and all that. So just give us a quick rundown of what you have and what you provide. And then we'll break away from this.
Okay, fantastic. Well, you can find my website on janaherde.com. It's gonna be, I guess, linked down there, so you see how to write my last name. It's a very German name, so janaherde.com. It's very simple. There you can find a bit of information, but because I always need to talk to you guys to see if I could help you or not, you can always book a consultation. The links are there on my website. Everything is very easy. My biggest, or let's say strongest platform on social media where you see daily content, I do free master classes, longer live streams where I share a lot of information, is Jana Herde Coaching. That's my Instagram name. Also very easy. And it's linked to a Facebook page that also runs under my name. But mostly it's the content from Instagram that ends up there. I'm not that active all the time on Facebook, but I'm now starting to be more present on LinkedIn. You have me there as Jana Herde, father-daughter relationship coach. So you see the whole concept there. I did it kind of in a way people see that it's me. And of course, if you know somebody who needs this type of content and who's on Instagram or on LinkedIn, you can always tell them to have a look. And of course, I'm always very happy to answer to direct messages from anybody. And you can also always schedule a consultation. So we have an hour just to talk through your situation and see if I can give you some help and resources.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that so much. And yeah, it's hard work keeping up with all the social media and the different sites. I mean, we're kind of opposite. We're more active on Facebook than Instagram, but there's we're just kind of a small little nonprofit organization here. I hope to grow and continue and be able to reach out and help as many people as possible as we go along with this. So I think anyone who watches this is going to definitely see some eye-opening facts and moments from this. So I really appreciate what you did for us today, and I hope I hope that we can do this again sometime. And
yes,
I want to definitely want to thank our sponsors of Fantastic Fathers Community Group. We couldn't do anything without you guys, you know that. And we are we're family focused and community driven. We are basically, I'd say 95% funded by these awesome sponsors that we have. So thank you so much to Liuna 625 and Cris Kambouris, and I mean, we've got Macro Foods, we've got so many others, Quinn Roofing. Couldn't do that without any of those guys. So thank you so much. And it's a new year, so we're looking for more for this year so that we can do more stuff like today. So get a hold of us if you're interested in sponsoring Fantastic Fathers. We'd love to send you out our package for that. Other than that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much again, Jana. And
thank you for having me.
You take care, and we will definitely be in touch again, for sure.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.